Today is January 10th, 2016, and this is Overgrowth Weekly 106 with Q&A number 22. My name is Lukas Orsvan.
I am Max Danielsson.
I'm David Resin.
And I'm Anton Real.
And yeah, let's jump right into the things. So, what's been going on with the game? So yeah, the sniper game was put on hold, right? So David, you're back on Overgrowth now.
That's right. It was just taking too much time away from Overgrowth. So I can get back to it later.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any idea of when you will be able to do that, or is it just like we'll see when it happens?
I think we'll just see how it goes.
Cool. So, whoa, dog.
Close the door.
So as for the development of Overgrowth, we're moving from Dropbox to Git LFS for our assets, which is something that's going to be more useful now that we're more people on the team, I think. It'll allow us
I think it's going to be super useful.
Yeah.
Because there already were a lot of missing files, and getting rid of that issue would be nice.
Yeah, less manual maintenance of what we release and don't release, and we also have the added benefit of being able to walk back in history and look at a snapshot of the game, as it's
Right.
it's tracked by the same system.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
it's going to be very useful. So to describe to people what this means, we used to use Dropbox, where you have one folder that has all the things in it, like all the assets. But now we're using Git LFS, which is an extension of Git, which is a version control system that we use for code normally, but it doesn't handle big files very well. So LFS stands for large file storage. And it adds a separate system on top of Git that makes it usable for using large files again. And this allows us to have everything in one place, everything is version controlled and so on, including all the models and textures and so on. So all the models are now connected to a specific version, so if we go back to an older version, we'll also have all the older assets also that was in that version. Now, if we went back in the previous version, we still have all the new assets, so it wouldn't be as useful. And this is super useful now that we have like our advanced testing, and we have the release version, and we have the internal testing. They all have the assets for them are now associated with them as well. So that's going to be very useful for us. We're moving to that like this coming week, or this week if you're Anton. So yeah, we have an arena update for the next alpha that's coming out. So Mike has been working on the arena, and that's finally going to be released for the next alpha. So you have that to look forward to.
He's coming back from an extended sick leave.
Yeah, not really sick leave. He hasn't been on leave. He has still been working, but
yeah, but I mean, it's hard when you're dying. Not quite.
It is very hard to work when you're almost.
I'm glad he hasn't died completely. He's only died a little inside.
Yeah, life does that to you.
So that's going to be interesting. I haven't had time to check it out myself because we've been having issues on the internal testing. We haven't been able to actually play any levels for like a day or two.
Yeah, it's up and running now. Baby, do you even call it that? It's like early issues with transferring over to the new with using LFS and our own manifest building system.
Yeah.
Right. I just synced from Dropbox to make my internal build work.
That's one solution. You shouldn't have to do that anymore. The internal branch should be functional now on Steam.
That's good.
Yeah.
So if you are using internal, you can keep using internal.
Yeah. So did you test the arena things, Anton?
Well, I did not, because I've been trying to work out an issue with some launcher where some of the basically the content from the community tab has not been showing up for people, and I finally traced it down to a bug that turns out to not be my fault. So I don't feel so bad. It's a fix that's going to come from Max, I guess, in theory.
Yeah.
Or a fix from Aaron if he decides to make some launcher into a mod as opposed to replacing system files
Yeah.
would also resolve that issue, because then we could change the location of where our database is stored. So, but it's a pretty major change for some launcher to do that. And Aaron is busy at his other job. So, which I guess I'm allowed to say. He works at Double Fine now. So he's been busy with some of those cool Double Fine releases lately.
Mm-hmm. Did you have something else to say, Anton?
No.
Okay.
No.
So Decals.
I think that's it. Well, I mean, we can say that the some launcher fixes will come, but anyone who's missing stuff from the community tab, it will come eventually. It'll be an update from Overgrowth that will fix it. But you can still always load files manually, and they'll still work within some launcher and some launcher related mods.
Yes. Decals work now. So we've had lots of trouble with decals, and they finally work. The blood doesn't fully work in the current released build, but that's being worked on as well. And hopefully we'll have them restored to their old functionality before long.
Can we talk about what happened? I mean, do we know what happened? Why they stopped working?
Yeah, them stopped.
Max?
Yeah, the reason they stopped working in the first place initially was, I mean, so they didn't really stop working as such. It's that between, I can't remember exactly, was it between 209 and 210 that there was a large overhaul on the rendering engine, and at that time we hadn't finished Decals yet. So we started working on it on the coming alphas, and the Decal system is kind of tied into a lot of stuff. So it initially worked minimally in certain conditions, and then we've continued developing it and finding new issues and fixing it and iterating on it. And lately now, it's the issue with the blood decals is that we have a upper limit on decals right now that is pretty low. So there's a very quick reuse. It is being re-implemented though, so it's going to we're gonna have a higher maximum limit of decals.
What's the maximum limit going to be?
I don't know what the
Very high.
Yeah, very high, so high that we're going to probably have
like hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And that means that we're probably going to have a soft limit somewhere to prevent overuse of decals. So it's not going to be the game that limits it, but
the performance, because you're not going to be able to render all those decals probably.
So the big change with the decals was that earlier we were doing it kind of an old-fashioned way, like multiple forward rendering passes.
Yeah.
And now with the higher quality lighting, each pass is a little bit heavier. It seems a lot more efficient just to combine them all into one pass. So it's more like what they call forward plus, tiled rendering, but still forwards. So we can decals and point lights and other kinds of dynamic lights are all kind of the same sort of thing. So once this is working, it should be a pretty easy step to get dynamic lights in also. That's why it's cool.
Yeah.
That should be great.
It's a big step forward in the technology we're using. It's a modern rendering technique instead of the old one. So even though it's causing issues right now, it's a necessary step to reach that.
So anyone who's complained about the look of the games and some of these new updates, that should change for them in the near future?
They've mostly been complaining because a lot of our new levels, they don't yet have detail textures and cool physically based materials or anything. There's not much spec and there's not much detail. And they also tend to be in the shadow, so our direct shadows aren't applying because the sun isn't shining on them. And we don't have our indirect shadows in yet. So it looks a little bit flat and low detail right now, but that's very temporary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those levels when they were made, we made them specifically to be as low detail as possible. 2 of the new arenas use two different models. They have a box model and then they have a crowd model. So it's not like we tried to make them look good.
Right.
But we are now, so that's gonna be improving pretty soon.
Yeah. I can't wait to talk about that, but I'll wait.
Yeah. So maybe we should show that video right now, actually, of the Waterfall arena. It's being made pretty by Mark.
Made pretty. I like that expression.
So let's.
This is kind of the medium pass. Mark is working on kind of medium detail. So we started with a like really boxy version just for the gameplay layout, and now he's making a better view of like what it's actually looking like. But we haven't done like the final prettifying pass yet with like particles and lighting and all that.
Yeah, it's yeah, fleshing it out basically, making it feel more alive place.
This kind of middle step.
So there you go. That's the Waterfall arena right now. Like I say, the middle step. It's
And it looks so much more beautiful. When I saw it the first time, I was like, wow, it really took the existing idea and made it into something very real feeling suddenly. So
Yeah.
And I guess we'll post that link in the chat for people to look at in high quality. How do I get back there? Is that? So. I forgot my controls. Yeah, I did it. Okay, I know how to navigate stuff. Okay, cool. So yeah, it's really looking much better already with a few days of work from Mark, and it's going to keep getting better, like you say, David. So yeah, beyond that, we have some more art stuff. Steve has been continuing on doing concept art and things like that, and he has been doing a redesign of Turner, which I think is really quite exciting. So let's take a look at that. I don't know if I need to do that.
So we're mostly done with the ideas of their proportions and anatomy of the different species, at least until we can test it out with the animation more. So now he's working more on characters and outfits.
Yes, and it's looking really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the faces. And the face.
I like that it really still feels like Aubrey's version of Turner, just sort of iterated on that style and look.
I agree. It's very nice looking. And then he also made, since we're working on the arena mode right now, he has been working on the player character for the arena. And let me see if
or one of the player characters, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The first, maybe.
It's the wrong. That's not what I want to do. Where is it? Yeah, it's okay. It's working, I think. No, it's not. There we go. All right. So the idea. Yeah, go ahead, David.
The simplest starting point for the arena will be you're just a slave that's kind of been conscripted to fight. And that's simplest because you don't really have any choices that you can make. You just have to do what you're told until you can earn yourself some more autonomy. So it'll be very difficult, but also straightforward.
So yeah, there are going to be 2 more states in there, if I'm not mistaken, which have different starting points. So that's how we mix it up, I suppose, sort of like a difficulty thing, with more complexity being added if the player wants it.
Right.
So yeah, that's some pretty cool stuff going on right there. And I think that's all of the updates for the development of the game. So let's jump into the questions. First, we have a question by Wake, who asks, will you consider using BuildBot? You can set up a BuildBot server on a simple computer, even a Raspberry Pi, and have it run at all times. It creates neat logs, and it's easy to initiate a build if you use Make. What do you say, Max?
Yes. I think I think Wake suggested it. I looked into it, and that's what we ended up using. So we're running that right now.
Yeah, I think you probably read this question when he asked it, and then you
Yeah,
were
I think he asked in the IRC, like he
Yeah,
may
okay.
have, yeah. So like he suggested, or maybe he suggested it in the chat. I was looking at Jenkins at the time. I landed on BuildBot due to its like relative simplicity. Jenkins is a bit more oversized for whatever we need. Yeah, it's a good fit. It works really well. I'm happy with it. We're now building everything for all platforms automatically every time we do a change. So we can see if it breaks on a specific platform and also have up-to-date versions on Steam and in packaged files, so that we remove the manual labor of doing that.
So thanks, Wake.
Thanks, Wake.
Yeah, thanks. We have a question in the chat. Thingyguy asks, are there online MP now? If not, how far down the line will it be? So for online MP, that's not something that's on the roadmap for us, but there is a multiplayer mod out right now that allows for online multiplayer. And we've said before, we've sort of answered this question before, but we will do our best to support that mod to make like small changes that we can make to make sure that they can do the thing that they want to do, pretty much, to support them. But we're probably not gonna make something like that on our own.
Yeah, maintenance and quality expectations are very different when you're building it into the game compared to having it as a separate mod. So even though it seems that we could just like assimilate this, that wouldn't really sadly work due to how perception works, and also the solution doesn't. It's a very special way that it's built. It's very impressive how they worked around everything to manage to actually get online multiplayer working. But it's not suitable for if something we would release.
We have another question from the chat. Howling Werewolf 1 asks, will the knife throwing animation be revamped? He asks David specifically.
Yes. I'm not really happy with how it looks right now, especially compared to some of the other throws. Like, I think the spear throw is my favorite right now. The knife throw is kind of complicated because you can do it while you're doing anything else. It doesn't just take over their whole body like the spear does, because they don't put as much force into it. But I definitely want to make that one look better, and also revamp some of the throwing mechanics in general. Because right now it's a little too focused on trying to make it realistic, like making sure he'll try and do some math to try and figure out how it should rotate so it's going to hit point first. And sometimes it doesn't quite work right, so it looks weird.
Yeah, the hilt sometimes bounces off enemies.
Yeah,
But I like when the hilt bounces, meaning if it hits with the hilt should bounce as opposed to sticking.
Yeah,
which wouldn't make any sense.
It should
kind
have
of like that. But I also want it to look a bit cooler in both situations.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to revamp the aesthetics of the knife throw at some point. That's not number one on my priorities, but at some point I'd like to make a whole pass on animation in general and hire like actual animators.
Cool. We have a question from Isaac, which is also related to the multiplayer thing, so I thought that we could take that pretty much at the same time. Isaac writes, I'm planning on showing this game to my friends, and I think that they would appreciate, more than they would appreciate it after purchasing it, a LAN function immensely. I am speaking more for the people who often play video games socially. So even like we've talked about having a LAN functionality in the game. Is that something that we want to have in there, or is that also beyond our scope?
I'm always hesitant to just say no, but I think we have to focus on what we're doing right now, which is a single player arena. And that would be fun. Like LAN is basically just a special case of online multiplayer where latency and bandwidth is less of a concern. So it'd definitely be easier.
Also, security is basically out of the window.
Yeah. So it's a lot simpler than making proper online multiplayer. But it's not really high up on our priority list.
Yeah, it's not what defines Overgrowth really.
No.
So next question is from Timbles, who asks, when will dialogue next be worked on, whether it be improving the dialogue editor, bugs, or the interface?
Well, I haven't been working on that in a while because we've been focusing on the arena instead of the campaign. But there are some low-hanging bugs that wouldn't be very hard to fix. We just have to get more organized with our tickets.
Yeah, it would be nice. We really need to go through those. I think there's still like 3,500, 4,000 tickets that are waiting to be reviewed. Yeah, we should definitely.
Because they've been cranking them out, though, right?
Yeah. No, it's not that. It's just that, I mean, bug or issue handling is a process of itself. We should definitely look into that, and like you said, low-hanging fruit, and list them.
I was thinking of making some tasks for myself based on how much energy I have. Like high energy was figuring out the architecture for the light probe system, and low energy could be like fixing the dialogue bugs.
Yeah.
So that I'll always have something I can be working on.
Right, so you can fall back on it when your brain is drained.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
We have a question from the chat. Spinnaker asks, for PBR, how do you generate the cube maps?
Well, we basically, for any lighting cube maps, we'll just take HDR pictures in each direction. It's kind of the naive approach, where you just have like a 90-degree field of view, take a picture. Now you have the cube map, and then you can progressively blur it based on how glossy the surface is. And then that's basically the ground truth solution, and it's very fast because it's using the GPU. And then the light probes right now just use the blurriest version of that, so we can store them in a very small space.
Yeah. Is that something, like, do you think we want to use those light probes that we'll have in there for specular reflections as well as the ambient reflections?
The standard solution for most games now is still have very high detail set of low resolution probes like this for their light maps, and they'll have like simple geometric shapes with higher resolution specular cube maps. So you'll say like this room has one big rectangular cube map that is roughly the same shape of the room. Because you have to have a compromise between like how many probes you have and how detailed they are. So they usually have more low-res probes and fewer high-res ones.
Yeah.
But for now, I'm just starting with the low-res ones because we just really need the basic idea of like, as you go deeper into a cave, it gets darker and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that gives a lot for the performance it takes.
So you're saying that at some point it might work like you have a lot of low detail probes in a room, and then you have like one high detail probe for the reflections.
Yeah, like the standard approach would be like in our cave arena, there would be a lot of probes showing how bright each part is. And then there might be like one giant spherical probe for the whole cave that gives a general idea of what the specular lighting is from each direction.
Yeah. Sweet. I'm just reading through the chat to see if there's been any ones. Well, there's a question from Ape Spectre who asks, how many lines of code do your engineers write a day on average? Which is a weird question, I think. I don't think, does anyone know?
Yeah.
Ideally negative.
Exactly.
That's always the best case, is where you take some old system that's not as good, and then you replace it with something that's better and smaller, so it's easier to maintain. But basically, I don't think that's a useful metric.
Not by itself in any way. It's dangerous to have pay people salary based on it too. It's like you only get a code base that is unreadable and complex.
You can just unroll loops for more money.
Yeah, exactly. More white spacing.
Yeah.
Spinnaker also answers, that's for the PBR generating cube map things. That's simple. I didn't think it would be doable in real time. Cheers. So I think it's important to note that the cube maps are not generated in real time, they're just used in real time. So the generation is a pre-process step that you do, and then you just use the generated images after that.
So there is a mode right now that I just did to test out the idea where you can make it update for all the characters every frame. And it does work pretty well. So it is doable in real time. I just don't want to require that for people.
Yeah, just like we just don't do that, right? I mean, we can do it, and you can activate that, but that's not going to be the main mode. Because I mean, it's still, even in its current shape, even if it works, it takes a lot of performance.
Yeah, because rendering a cube map, you are rendering 6 more times.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't scale really well with a larger environment.
Or many characters.
And many characters, yeah.
But it's also like on a reasonably fast GPU. Like I have this computer that used to be pretty high end, but now it's not as much. I think it has this 970 GTX or something. And it usually runs the game at like 500 to 1000 frames per second. Yeah. So when I turn that on, it brings it down to like 200 or 300.
That's a big percentage of the entire execution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But still pretty real time.
Yeah,
it's
definitely real time.
For sure. Yeah. Berstark. I feel like I want to read that in Swedish. Asks, are there any chances of some sort of having moving camera options during a cutscene? Something like attaching the camera object to a path and tell it to go from point A to B in X seconds to make a tracking shot of sorts.
Kind of. I'm kind of hesitant to try and make like a full scripting cutscene type system, because in games I tend to prefer also, if there's something cool that would be happening in a cutscene that would require a tracking shot, that should just be gameplay probably. So I want to focus on just having it more for the static dialogue. But I definitely want to have some kind of fairly simple camera animation, because you can already just orient and place the camera, so it's not much harder to place two and then just say interpolate between those two positions based on some curve.
Yeah.
You could even do that as some kind of like intro into a level where you zoom, or it could show you the path you're supposed to take before the level starts, or all kinds of introductory level movements, you know. You could even, I guess, even use that to create trailers or something where you do fly-throughs of a level.
Yeah.
If you want that to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and
so
having a zoom, like an FOV change ability, would be probably nice too, to like be able to recreate some of the common camera effects used in movies.
Mm-hmm.
To
do the vertigo effect.
Yeah, like the one where they move the camera forward but zoom out. It's like you create tension. Yeah, like just those simple effects would be, and it's not a hard change either to just enable FOV change temporarily for a cinematic camera.
I have seen a lot of questions in other places about the camera, if you would ever have multiple distances from your character, like if you ever want to change the angle that you're looking or be closer or further away from your character. And I think that most of the people that are, I would say, complaining, asking about that, sound like they're using the automatic camera that's designed for play with a controller. So I'm curious if that's something also that, you know, I guess there's sort of two questions. Is one, you know, why does it automatically lock onto things like a dead person on the ground? And then So will that be addressed? And then B, if there will be other just like relative positions to your character that you'd be able to play at.
I would like to revisit the automatic camera, because I think there is a significant set of the audience that isn't really good at controlling the character and the view at the same time. Like, we kind of take it for granted growing up with FPS games and such, but a lot of people just can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to have some sensible defaults where the camera's just doing whatever it is, unless you override it by actually pressing the buttons.
Right.
I just haven't worked on that in a while.
Yeah, I haven't thought about it, but I think even like old platformers do that. Mario 64.
Yeah, Mario 64 kind of pioneered the third-person camera cinematography.
Yeah, and they have like a dragging camera almost.
I think Star Fox might have done some stuff with that too at some point. But yeah.
No, definitely that's something that to look into. Like you said, as an FPS player, we just take control and it's automatic. But if you're used to more classic platformers, that's not going to be as easy. The gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
That game company had a really good talk about camera movement and journey, and all the complicated things you might not have considered.
There were some interesting movements in that game. Like when they forced you to have the side view when you were skiing down the side of the dune and stuff. There was, sorry, spoiler.
Spoiler, you ski down the side of the dune.
But if you've played through the game, then you know the section that I'm talking about, because the camera behaved so differently in that scene than anywhere else in the whole rest of the game. You did kind of get used to how the camera moves. And they've always been
some basic decisions. Like if there's like a column in the middle of a desert, you might not want the camera to
get stuck.
Like normally you'd have the camera come in front of anything, so there's nothing between the camera and the player. Yeah. But sometimes it's less disruptive just to let the thing be in front of the camera. Like if you're in a forest, then you can just be running around and the trees keep going by, and otherwise you'd keep on like bumping forwards and back as the trees get in the way.
I actually remember struggling with this when we were working on a platformer. The debate about it. How do you want the camera that's physical in the space, or do you just want it to simplify it as a ray you cast into the world and then find the first intersection and place it there, which can be very jarring. It comes down a lot to level design as well, like how they interact with the camera.
Yeah. So I think that will be the end of the show. So yeah, check out OG Weekly on Twitter and on YouTube. We're OG Weekly on those, as well as ogweekly.com for the archives of all the shows. So yeah, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you again in 2 weeks.
Bye bye.
See you guys.